Join me as we dive into blue carbon systems, the planet's built-in carbon sink. As natural carbon sequesters, blue carbon systems store atmospheric carbon and keep it from re-entering the atmosphere. The name blue carbon refers to marine ecosystems, including mangroves, tidal marshes, and seagrasses, as well as others like kelp forests, coral reefs, and shellfish colonies, all of which act as carbon storage units. This storage function occurs due to our planet's carbon cycle process. So, carbon is vital to all forms of life, and it's even found in inorganic materials. And this graphic demonstrates how carbon can be carried into the atmosphere, such as through natural combustion, like volcanoes or forest fires, or human-induced actions like the burning of fossil fuels. In fact, volcanic eruptions and wildfires are two of the primary sources of natural carbon dioxide. In contrast, carbon leaves the atmosphere through the process of assimilation, where inorganic forms of carbon, like carbon dioxide, are converted into organic forms, such organic compounds by living things, like the energy storage in plants or the biomolecular structure of animals, like the cows. And in other words, carbon becomes stored in the bodies or structures of these organic life forms. So here we have the carbon cycle pertaining to blue carbon systems. Like the previous graphic showed, carbon dioxide is taken up by these plants, and to the left we have some, I guess this is right, to the right we have some mangroves, right? That would be right, I think.
It's left.
Is it left? Okay, never mind. To the left, I can't think right now. To the left we have some mangroves taking in carbon dioxide, which they'll use for photosynthesis, as I described earlier. And these coastal plants, including the marshes and seagrasses, also in this diagram, will take this atmospheric carbon and sequester it into the soil, a critical component as to how blue carbon systems work and store carbon. So here we have a seagrass meadow, and seagrass meadows are a blue carbon system as well. They are mainly found in shallow, salty, and brackish waters, and various species are dependent on these large ecosystems, such as bigger ones like seals or smaller ones like arthropods. And seagrass meadows store carbon within their leaves and the sediment that they compile. So here in Florida, really cool, we have what is regarded as the second largest seagrass meadow within the United States. This area is called the Big Bend, and it's more than 984,000 acres long, with 267,000 acres of seagrasses spanning the area. The Big Bend demonstrates how vast these blue carbon systems are, as well as how they're living right in our backyards, emphasizing the importance of us protecting them. So, shellfish colonies also hold importance as blue carbon systems. In this picture, we see an expanse of oyster beds during the low tide, and oysters have been around for millions of years, dating all the way back to the Jurassic period. And the Greeks and Romans were some of the earliest to farm and harvest oysters for human consumption. Yum. And here we can see a farmer attending to an expansive cultivation of oysters. So here's the life cycle of an oyster. Oysters will first start as an embryo once the egg has been fertilized. Then they'll form free-flowing embryos and become larvae. And this state in their life cycle lasts about 3 weeks. So here at the top, you have the three larval stages. I don't know if we'll color that, whatever. And they must attach themselves to suitable substrate in order to begin life as a spat, which is super important because if they don't, they'll unfortunately die. And so oysters will continue to grow until the end of their lives, which is 2 to 3 years, and farmers will typically follow a harvesting schedule of 18 to 24 months. So right here, the slide shows the materials an oyster shell is made of, which is calcium carbonate. There you go. Calcium carbonate is the combination of 3 oxygens sharing electrons with a carbon, and because their unique electromagnetic state, together attract and keep calcium in their group. This magnetic phenomena, this is where oyster shells take their role as a blue carbon system. So earlier in the carbon cycle graphic, we discussed the assimilation of carbon. In that graphic, there was the assimilation of plankton along the surface of the water. And as I mentioned, assimilation describes a process where inorganic forms of carbon, like carbon dioxide, are converted into organic forms, such as within the cows. They'll use it for their bones or other parts of their body. So where the water and the atmosphere meet, carbon dioxide will combine with the water and form a carbonic acid. This acid then breaks down into two ions, one of which is carbonate. So a simple way to think of this reaction is with what happens when you're drinking soda. The bubbles you feel when drinking soda are caused by carbonic acid forming as a result of the carbon dioxide being pushed into that bottle. So oysters rely on this same process of carbonic acid breaking down into ions to create their shells. And they'll take the calcium in their bodies and combine this with the carbonate ions, effectively forming a compound known as calcium carbonate. So here we have the molecule right there. And so if you look at this molecule, you'll see the black ball or atom, which resembles carbon. The three red atoms are oxygens, and the white atom is calcium. So the reason for carbon and oxygen's attachment is their covalent bond. As I mentioned earlier, they like to share their electrons. They're like siblings, I guess, trying to share a toy. And on the other hand, you have calcium and carbon, who are attracted to each other through an electromagnetic force, like the two poles of a magnet. So calcium has a positive charge, like the south pole of a magnet, while carbon reflects the negative charge of the magnet's north pole. And calcium carbonate also has an atomic weight of 100 grams, which is nearly half of oxygen's. And because oysters use calcium carbonate to create and build their shells, they act as effective stores for atmospheric carbon, which makes up 12% of their shell mass, which is a pretty nice number. And so this calcium carbonate formation is a very similar process undergone by coral reefs as well, as they also rely on the compound to build their skeletal structure. And likewise, limestone is another natural component of the earth that is made up of a conglomeration of shells, coral, etc. So essentially, limestone is immense sedimentary buildup of calcium carbonate. And here in Florida, another cool place to check out is Florida Mariana State Park, where you can see this large limestone system or calcium carbonate buildup for yourself. So just to reiterate, carbon is found everywhere on the planet. This element is in me, it's in you, your cat, your dog, your lizards, fossils, it's everywhere. And as I mentioned earlier, carbon is even found in your soda. So I really hope you all enjoyed this presentation and you'll come join me on my journey as I venture out and dive even deeper into these blue carbon systems. So grab your life vest and let's get to it. Bye, everyone. Oops. Okay.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.